Untap, upkeep, and welcome back to the channel if you've been here before. If you haven't, then please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. But while you're relaxing, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. If you've already done all that, well then, from me to you, thank you, I love you, and welcome back for the support. So, I kind of alluded to a new deck I was going to unveil to everybody. This is actually a few months old, but I took an idea. I tend to do this when I get a little bored and try to come up with new decks. So I literally took a standard deck and turned it into a commander deck. That's all I did. Is it the most powerful thing? Probably not, because it is still kind of budget. A little over 175, a little under 200 bucks. So it's still kind of budget-ish. But I took one Brian Kibler's standard deck and made it a commander deck. So, if you don't know who Brian Kibler is, look him up. He's very well known in the Magic community. Really nice guy. I haven't met him yet in person, but he seems like a really chill guy and just loves to play a lot of Magic. He doesn't normally go out and play in tournaments these days, but he did this time, and it was pretty cool to see him play. So, this is pretty much everything you would see in his deck, plus some bonus cards because we are in Commander, we are Singleton, so we had to have a lot more support. So bear with me and let's go on this journey. This could take a minute, but I'll make it as quick as I can. So the Commander is one of the lich pins to the whole deck in the first place. Rocco Street Chef. He's a red, a green, and a white. For an elf druid, that's a 2/4. At the beginning of your end step, each player exiles the top card of their library until your next end step. Each player may play the card they exiled this way. So in a way that's bad because we're also helping our opponent be able to kind of filter and get a few extra pieces to their deck. So there is a little bit of a negative here. And then his other ability says whenever a player plays a land from exile or casts a spell from exile, you put a 1/1 counter on a target creature you control and create a food token. So that's kind of what we're going after. We're just trying to increase and increment all this value with this commander. And we have a couple of planeswalkers that can help along with everything that we're doing. So this is Nissa, Ascendant Animist. You could play her for 3, a green, and another green, and another green, or any combination of 3 green, green, and 2 life, or 4 life. So we can play around with how we need to cast her. If you pay the life, she comes in with less loyalty. This is like the fancy completed art version, but if you go to like the normal version, it'll tell you everything you need to know about her. So if you play her for a total of 7 mana, she's gonna come into play with 7 loyalty. You can +1 to make a XX green Phyrexian horror creature token, where X is the loyalty counters on Nissa. And then you can -1 to destroy an artifact or enchantment, which is probably the bigger deal that we're going to use her for until we get to the bottom. So we can -7 until end of turn. Creatures you control get +1/+1 for each forest you control and trample. Backbreaking. Oh, yes. So if we get her late game, we're able to survive and have some kind of board, which we have 32 creatures to do that with, then we're gonna lay on some damage here. So the other planeswalker I decided to add into this was Quintorius Han. He's a 3, a red, and a white. He comes into play with 4 loyalty counters. Now this is why I added him into this. So whenever you cast a spell from exile, he deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. So every time we play a spell from Rocco that is exiled, now we have to play a spell. It's not counting lands, it's actually playing spells. We're going to deal 2 damage to everybody and gain 2 life. Pretty good little synergy there. His +1, we can make a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. -3, we discover 4. You can go look that up yourself. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details on that, not in this video. And then his ultimate is -6. Exile any number of target cards from your graveyard. Add a red mana for each card exiled this way, and you may play those cards this turn. Play is very important. If for whatever reason we are needing another land drop, we can do that and still play a land for our turn. Very, very crucial thing to keep in mind. If it said cast, like his static ability does, then we wouldn't be able to make another land drop if we had to. So if you were fighting like a mill deck and you dropped the ultimate, it probably didn't really hurt you very much. Oh boy, moving on to the creature suite. Here we go. So I guess we'll start off with Beza, the Bounding Spring. He's a 2, a white, 4/5 elemental elk. He's also a legendary creature, but he's in here just because he has incremental value. So when he enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. If an opponent has more lands, you gain 4 life. If an opponent has more life than you make 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens if somebody has more creatures than you, and then you get to draw a card if an opponent has more cards in hand than you do. So kind of a mid to late game, if you will. This is just a nice kind of we're gonna catch up kind of thing to it. So, and there's a special card later on in the enchantment section that you'll see why is very, very important to this. Phelan, the Haymaker. So we can tap 2 untapped tokens we control to add 1 mana of any color. You notice it doesn't specify on creatures. That means every time somebody plays something and we make that food token, we can use the food to help make mana if we need to. And his ability goes further with these food tokens we're trying to make. We can tap 3 of them to draw a card, and we can tap 4 to put 3 1/1 counters on Balin. He will gain trample until end of turn. So as you can see, he's got pretty good synergy with our commander. For every food token that he's making off of all these other cards being cast and played, we're able to benefit from it. Any Flash, the veteran. Um, I'm not really going to go into a whole lot of details on like the overall specs of the creatures. I'm just going to read a lot of what they do because we have a lot to get through and not a lot of time. So first of all, she has Flash, so you can play her at instant speed, which is sweet. Love that. So when any Flash, the veteran, enters the battlefield, if you cast it, return target permanent card with a mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, aka we can get Balin back if he ever got a kill spell thrown at his face. And then whenever she becomes tapped, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. So when you turn her sideways to go swinging in at somebody, we're able to exile 2 cards from the top of our deck, and we can play them this turn so we can make our land drops, and we can just continue pressure. Because we have a couple of, our commander and Ventorius they have so much synergy with this. We're going to move on to Agro's Cause, Spirit of Justice. He has double strike and vigilance. He has a 2/4 body. That's pretty good. So whenever he enters the battlefield or attacks, use up to 1 target creature. If it's suspected, exile it. Otherwise, suspect it. And a suspected creature has menace and cannot block. So when he enters the battlefield, we're going to pick something to be suspected. And then we can turn him sideways. I believe I have a few things in here to give haste. Even if we have to wait another turn, it'll be fine. Because then whenever we get to turn him sideways, we get to choose up to 1 target creature, and if it was suspected, we can remove it from the game. So if somebody has a, let's say, horrifying Blightsteel Colossus, we can suspect it. It has menace, it cannot block, and hopefully we have haste on the battlefield so we can just turn it sideways immediately, target the Blightsteel, and remove it from the game. Don't have to worry about it. It is gone. So just a decent body. And because he has vigilance, we can attack and still have him as a blocker. So that's always nice. The Aerial Extortionist, whenever it enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains in exile, its owner may cast it. But whenever another player casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, we are going to draw a card. So, with this combination with our commander means whenever you cast a spell that has been exiled thanks to our commander, we're going to benefit and draw some cards. Not really a bad thing, in my opinion. Academy Manufacturer, if you've been playing Magic for even a decent while in the form of Commander, I'm sure you've seen this or heard about this. It has been reprinted in a couple of Commander decks here recently. So if you haven't seen it before, it's a 3-drop 1/3 artifact creature that if you would create a food, a clue, or a treasure token, you make one of all of them instead. So this, with our commander, means every time we cast something from exile, we're going to make a food, a clue, and a treasure. And you could just imagine how that can snowball. The treasure will give us mana, but if we have like Balin out, we can tap the food and the clue to make another mana, and just we can even tap the treasure if we feel like it and not use it for its sacrifice ability. We can actually tap all three if we needed to and draw a card thanks to Balin. So Balin's a pretty big piece in this. Birds of Paradise, it's just a nice 1-drop, add 1 mana of any color. The Bone Horde Dracusar goes really well with this deck as well, because at the beginning of our upkeep, we're going to exile the top 2 cards of our library. You may play them this turn. If you exile a land this way, we make a 3/1 red dinosaur creature token. If you exiled a non-land card this way, we make a treasure token. Again, we're making tokens, whether it be a creature body or a treasure token. You can see how this kind of starts to synergize. Candy Manufacturer, if we make treasure tokens, it's going to give us one of all three. Either way, we have Balin that can make Balin huge, draw cards, or even just use them for mana. Dejru and Hazoret. For as long as you have one or fewer cards in hand, they have Vigilance and Haste. It's a 5/4. So whenever they attack, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may exile a legendary creature card from among them and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Until end of turn, you may cast the exile card without paying its mana cost. Legendary, 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 legendary. Are you sensing a theme? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is a legendary tribal deck. This thing's gonna hit most of the time, and it's gonna be bad. Oh look, another legendary, the Dragon Hawk's Fate's Tempest. So whenever it enters or attacks, exile the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of creatures you control with power 4 or greater. You may play those cards until your next end step. And at the beginning of your next end step, Dragonhawk deals 2 damage to each opponent for each of those cards that are still in exile. Again, things from exile, whether we like it or not, we're either making bodies, making value, or dealing a whole bunch of damage with the Dragonhawk. Dust Legion Duelist. It really has just the synergy of with our commander, we can put a 1/1 counter on it and draw a card. Itali, as you can just imagine, not only is it legendary and it can be found with Dejru and Hazoret, but whenever it attacks, we exile everybody's top card and we get to play those cards. Any number of them that we want. So it's just a cheap, efficient 6/6 body that we're able to just keep our value train going. That's all it really does. So Kutzul, Malamut, Exemplar. I totally butchered your Malamut. I don't know. Moving on. It again is another legendary creature that can be found with Hazoret and Dejru. So your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. Great, we love that. Another card that synergizes with our commander, as you can tell, is whenever one or more creatures you control, each with power greater than its base power, deals combat damage to a player, we get to draw a card. What's hilarious about that is you can even put a 1/1 counter on our Birds of Paradise, and if somebody doesn't have flying, turn it sideways, deal the damage with a Birds of Paradise, and still draw a card with the Quetzal on the battlefield. I think that's just funny. Kellen, Daring Traveler, he has an adventure side. We can make some map tokens if we needed to, just to kind of keep him safe. But whenever he attacks, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, with mana value 3 or less. Put it into your hand, otherwise you may put it into your graveyard. So this has several hits from our creatures, as you can tell just widely looking at the page that we have in front of us right now. We have quite a bit of hits that Kellen could actually hit. There's not a lot that he can't. So I think it's just a great card to have in here. And again, a legendary creature that can be found. Jaheira, Friend of the Forest. Just very clean, very simple. Great. You have tokens that can make you green mana. It's not creatures, it's not just clues, nor foods, nor treasures. It's just tokens you control have tap, add a green. Granted, if it is a creature, it will have summoning sickness and you won't be able to use it to make green. But what makes that so powerful is our clues and most importantly, our treasures. We don't have to get rid of our treasures to make mana. We can just turn them sideways and say we're using it for Jaheira's ability and make green mana. What's not to like about this? Hajar, Loyal Bodyguard, is just a nice 2-drop that we were able to go find with Deshru and Hezret, and he's got just a very simple ability. Sacrifice him, and creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain indestructible until end of turn. Quick, clean, easy, simple. Go to board wipe, sack this guy, and hopefully save our board. Go to Goose. I mean, it's kind of like another Birds of Paradise. We can make food tokens with it, which triggers, excuse me, our Academy manufacturer, and can be used with Balin and even Jaheira. This is one that gets really fun too. Feldorn, Dread Wolf Herald. So whenever you cast a spell from exile, or a land enters the battlefield under your control from exile, make a 2/2 wolf creature token. Then we can pay 1, tap, discard a card, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. So play, again, means we can play lands if we exile a land. Either way, we just care about making a body. It's just a nice 3-drop, 3/3 creature that synergizes really well with overall build of the deck. I really think this deck has a scary amount of synergy, actually, for what was a standard deck now gone Commander. Continuing the legendary train, we have Lauren of the Third Path. When she ETPs, we can blow up an artifact or enchantment, and then we can tap her to make us and an opponent draw a card. So maybe we can earn some good favor. Maybe we can buy a little bit of a favor ourselves if somebody's a little low on cards. Typically a mono white or even a mono red deck. They don't really have a lot of card draw. Pretty limited there. Red has a little bit more than white as far as like budget options are concerned, but so we could maybe be political with this. Moving on, we have Malaria the Living Cure. If you would get one or more poison counters, instead you get one poison counter, and you can't get additional poison counters this turn. And then we exile her, choose another target creature or artifact. When it's put into a graveyard this turn, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So, excuse me, we are able to use her to kind of save an important piece of our battlefield if we needed to. Whatever we're trying to do to make some kind of presence, some kind of pressure, whether it be the Academy manufacturer or one of, any number of things over here to draw cards, Balin, or even Feldon. We're having a way to hopefully save some things. I mean, you could actually exile her to make the Hajar come back, sack the Hajar to make everything indestructible, and he will come back. That's actually pretty sweet to try and do. We have Miglaw's Maze Crusher. So when he enters the battlefield, he comes into the battlefield with 5 oil counters on him. And you could do the following in the order or however you need to. So pay 1, remove an oil counter. It gains vigilance and menace until end of turn. Well, it's already a 4/4, so that's a little scary. Pay 2, remove 2 oil counters, and it gets a +2/+2 until end of turn. Yikes. But we don't have trample at that point. So not really that scary, but we can pay 3, remove 3, and destroy an artifact or enchantment. That is pretty spicy. So we've got a couple of different things we can do. He's gonna be in here mainly for that last ability, and even yeah, Mike can do the first ability, but mainly the last ability, I think. Plus, he's a 4/4 for 3 mana. Yikes! And then we have Mira, the Trash Tactician, which is gonna be pretty interesting in this deck. She's not gonna make like a whole lot of like extra mana for us by any sense of it, but because at the beginning of our first main phase, we're going to add a red or a green for each raccoon we control. There's not a whole lot of raccoon synergy here, but that's okay. What we care about is the next 2 abilities. So whenever you expend 4, you gain 3 life. And you expend 4 as you spend your 4th total mana to cast spells during this turn. And then you go a step further. Whenever you expend 8, exile the top 2 cards of your library and put until end of your next turn, you may play those cards. Again, a lot of play in this deck, so we have a lot of ways to be able to play lands that we've exiled if we need land drops that bad. Pardon me. Everyone took is a nice way to get some card draw by making some foods, because if we would make a token under our control, we get that token and a food token. So we make a clue when this guy is out, we're able to make a food. With 3 foods, we can sacrifice them and draw some cards. So Peregrine took just another really good value piece to draw some cards. Hela Nalar, Consul of Revival. So Thopters we control have haste, and whenever you play a land from exile or cast a spell from exile, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter creature token with flying. So we can make some flying bodies in combination with our commander, and I think it's just that simple. Pretty nice. Skrelv, well, Skrelv has Toxic 1, which we don't really care too much about, honestly. And he can't really block. Again, we don't really care about that. What we care about is we can either pay 2 life or a white mana to tap him and choose a color. Another target creature you control gains Toxic 1 and hexproof from that color until end of turn. It can't be blocked by creatures of the chosen color. So this gives us a way to protect a piece on our board as long as it's been at least a turn or has haste. So we have at least a way to protect something. And I mean, we could give it toxic, but that's not really our benefit. Being able to protect things. We have Savvy Trader, so whenever he enters the battlefield, exile target permanent card from our graveyard. You may play that card for as long as it remains in exile. Spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 1 less to cast. So he's going to make our exiled cards cheaper when they are not lands, and I think that's just pretty self-relevant spicy right there. Samwise Gamgee, whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you make a food token. Again, going with our token theme, and then we can sack 3 foods to return a historic card from our graveyard to our hand. So we're able to recur, surprise, all of these legendary creatures that are in this deck and other permanents in this deck that would count for the historic, like sagas, artifacts, and keep our value trains alive. Ruby Daring Tracker, just a nice 2-drop, has haste, and we can tap it for mana. Her other ability is kind of irrelevant. I mean, if you attack with a creature power 4 or greater, she gets a +2/+2. We don't really care about that. Rosie, on the other hand, this is some next level spice. So, whenever she enters the battlefield, we make a food. And then whenever you create a food token, well, whenever you create a token, not a food token, I'm sorry. Whenever you create a token, put a 1/1 counter on target creature other than Rosie. So, her ability, you cannot use to target her. You can use our commander to target her and make her a little bit bigger. But she can help pump our board for like damage here and there, like our Dragonhawk or anything like that to hopefully keep dealing some damage and applying some pressure every time we make a food, a clue. thopter, a treasure, a wolf, anything like that is going to trigger her. And she can be pretty scary. Again, we're pretty much a legendary tribal deck, so kind of expected. So then we move on to Plarg and Nasari. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. An opponent chooses a non-land card exiled this way. You may cast up to 2 spells from among the other cards exiled this way without paying their mana cost. Pretty self-explanatory why it's in here. I mean, pretty nasty. Urbrask, Heretic Praetor. Now he's going to be fun for us. So at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of our library, and we may play it this turn. Again, play, very important. If we're having to worry about land drops, they got us. We can still make a land drop. Instead of playing one from our hand, unless we absolutely have to, we just play one that we exiled if we exiled one. Just makes sense. So his other ability, though, is at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, the next time they would draw a card this turn, instead they exile the top card of their library. They may play it this turn. So you kind of can hose somebody who draws a bunch of cards and go, sorry, you're going to be able to exile those, and if you don't play them, well, they're gone forever. Enjoy. And then finally, rounding up our creature package, we have Jotun Descendant. So whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under I control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature we control. So every time we use our commander to make a food, a clue, a treasure, whatever, we're able to trigger this. In this case, our commander makes clues. No, he makes foods. Yeah, I was right. So we make foods. So whenever we make foods, we're able to not only use our commander's ability to pump something up, we're using him too. Continuing on to our sorceries, we have Animist Might, which is just a nice little bite spell, if you will, because target creature you control deals damage equal to twice its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. And if it's legendary, this thing is going to cost 2 less. So most of our cards in here are legendary, meaning that this is essentially pay 1 mana and get rid of something on the battlefield. We have a pretty standard sweep of ramp with Cultivate, Farseek, Nature's Lore, Rampant Growth, and 3 visits. All of them go find us lands with Nature's Lore, Farseek, and 3 visits, finding the ability to get us non-basics such as the Chevelle lands, or if you really put stupid amount of money into this deck, you could do the OG dual lands, things like that. A little bit more card draw with Shamanic Revelation. Most of the creatures in this deck are very low to the curve or some kind of token, so we're able to hopefully draw quite a lot of cards to keep the gas going and keep some pressure on the battlefield. We're using Starfall Invocation as a board wipe. It was also a piece of the original standard deck. We can gift a card, meaning somebody we choose will be able to draw a card. Destroy all creatures, and if a gift was promised, return a creature card put into your graveyard this way to the battlefield under our control. So we can kill everything and already have something back. Not bad. Burning Torch the Tower to have some spot removal as well as swords. Destroy Evil and Path to Exile. Chaos Warp as well. Dawn's Truce, just a nice way to protect ourselves and our board, as well as Boar's Charm. And then finally, Delayed Blast Fireball is just a nice, consistent, we're going to just board wipe every couple of turns, and that's all there's going to be to it. Because once it's been played once, it gets pretty nasty. So you can Delay Blast Fireball for 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. Not bad. We like this one. If the spell was cast from exile, it deals 5 damage to each opponent and each creature they control instead. You notice it says from exile. We don't have to do the foretell. We can just have it exiled with one of our many exile effects, pay 3 mana, and deal 5 damage. pretty interesting, huh? Again, aside from Swiftfoot boots and the Soul Ring at the time of the well, yeah, I mean at the time of the build they were a lot higher. They've come down since the time of this build, so that's definitely helped our budget. Being under 200 bucks. But moving on to the artifacts, we have a pretty fair sweep. We're running Wayfarer's Bauble Vessel, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Belwar Stone, the Mind Stone, Prismatic Lens, our boots. We're running Idol of Oblivion because we're making a whole bunch of tokens, and this thing only cares about making tokens, and we get to draw a card. And then finally, we're running the Relic of Legends because it's another mana rock, but it's a very, 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 very good one in this deck. We can tap an untapped legendary creature we control and add 1 mana of any color. So at any point in time, our opponent thinks that we are tapped out of lands. As long as we have this and a few of our legendary creatures on the battlefield, but bam, we have mana to instant speed react with things that we don't want. So we can Dawn's Truce to save ourselves and our board, as well as Boar's Charm. We could deal with permanents with some spot removal here. We could even delayed blast Fireball if we felt like it. So it's just a really solid piece in this. Moving forward, onto our enchantments. First of all, we have Rhythm of the Wild. So creatures we control that are being cast cannot be countered. And then non-token creatures you control have Riot. Riot means they enter the battlefield with either a +1/+1 counter or they gain haste. One or the other, not both. So this is a way that we can give our stuff haste if we're trying to just swing in for some damage, as long as they're not a token. Or if it's not a good idea to attack, maybe we just make our stuff bigger and just kind of wait a turn or two until we have a good opportunity to strike. Caretaker's Talent, if you've been playing Standard any point in time the past handful of weeks to, what is it, a couple of months now, you already know the power of this card. Whenever you make a token, you get to draw a card. It triggers only once each turn. When it becomes a level 2, you make a token copy of a target token that you control. And then, because we do have so many creature tokens, we can level this all the way to the max. And creature tokens we control get a +2/+2. So, earlier we have a little bit of recursion for anything that is considered historic. This doesn't really go with that, but and it's kind of a shame. If it was a saga, it would. But we might have a couple of other ways we can figure out a way to keep this alive or bring it back. Our other class is Bard class. So legendary creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them. So that's like 90% of our creatures, because 90% of our creatures are legendary. Legendary spells you cast cost 2 less, or in specific, a red and a green. This effect reduces only the amount of colored mana to play. So for a red and a green, we play this class. And then for another red and a green, we make it level 2, meaning any of our stuff that has red and green in it that is a legendary spell, we're able to knock that off of the mana cost, such as our commander. And then if we make it the final evolution of this class, which is 3, a red, and a green, whenever you cast a legendary spell, exile the top 2 cards of your library, you may play them this turn. Again, more exile synergy. Never a bad thing. Finally, we have Annie Joins Up. This is the enchantment I was talking about earlier, and kind of foreshadowed. So it's a legendary enchantment, meaning Samwise can get it back if we need it to. And then we have, when Annie Joins Up enters the battlefield, she deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker in opponent control. It's good there, but we care about this next one. If a triggered ability of a legendary creature you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So a lot of our creatures with triggered abilities up here that are legendary, they're all going to trigger twice. Yep, that means Peregrine Took, Rosie, Feldon, Itali, all these things trigger an additional time, and it's just not good for everybody. It's just not. So we are also running a pretty decent land spread, I think. So just kind of running through, we have a mixture of lands. We have Battlefield Forge, Bonder's Enclave, Brushland, Canopy Vista, Cinder Glade, Clifton Retreat, Fountain Port. If you've played Standard for a while now, you know how good this is. We make tokens that we can eat and draw cards. We can make a fish, and we can even make a treasure token to turn on some of the other things. Kind of a no-brainer to be put in this deck. Running a set of basic forest, a set of basic plains, a field of ruin to deal with some problematic lands that may arise in any kind of game, exotic orchard, evolving wilds, command tower, Capuchin forest, Kessick wolf run to give something trample if we needed to punch through, some mountains, path of ancestry, a reliquary tower, terramorphic expanse, subpetal grove, sheltering landscape, and a root bound crag. Path of ancestry. Don't believe we have a whole lot of synergy for that. I mean, there's Chihira. She's an elf. I don't think we have a whole lot of like synergies. Is why that was even added. It was added mainly because it is another what we call Rainbow Land. I mean, we can use Feldorn. That's two. Yeah, it's not all really a whole lot, but that's okay. But that is the basic lowdown of the deck. We are a legendary tribal standard deck brought to the world of Commander, ready to do battle. This is not as mean as you could actually make it, because you could make a swap or two and add in like Draneth Magistrate. So Draneth Magistrate would allow us to play our spells from exile, but it would lock your opponent out from being able to play spells, which it could be a good thing, could be bad, because this deck just cares about everybody playing something so we get value. Kind of the only reason I never added it to the deck is we're not looking to be that mean, and we want to get value. We don't really care about locking everybody out. We're just trying to increment our value and pressure the board. As you can see, our mana curve is pretty good, I think. I mean, we're not really like peaking in a whole lot except for in our 2s and 3s. I mean, we need some more 1s probably. You can modify this deck a little bit if you want pour some more money into it and probably make it one heck of a beat stick, but I didn't think that was necessary. Because I literally just copied his deck list, and um, instead of making it a standard legal deck, we just cut all the way down to just single copies of things. And added them into the deck. And then just had to finish flourishing out the deck. Oh man, I would ship this, but man, that's so tempting. Ooh, glad I shipped it. That was gonna be bad. So another sample hand. We're very land heavy now. But we have Sam. We'll be able to get our commander out. Yeah, I mean, we eventually hit a board wipe that we can hold on to. We're hitting our land drops. So, I don't know. Might be a pretty okay hand to keep. Let's do another. Might be an okay hand just because we do have the goose, and she can tap as well as this. Okay, so, yeah, I think we would actually keep that. Draw a Chaos Warp, play the goose. Draw a Nisa as Saffron Olive likes to call her. We could play our Nature Sword, go find something, be up some mana, pass the turn, draw another card, Dawn's Truce. Play the Vampire. So, I mean, we're not winning the race. We're not coming out blazing speed with how much mana we're making right now, but that's okay. That's okay. I don't think we really need it. So, as you can see, this is standard Brian Kibler going into Commander with Rocco. So let me know what you think about the deck. I mean, do you think something like this is off the wall enough that your local game store's just going to be going, what in the world is this? Or has anyone else done a build like this? I actually have a couple of other decks I can kind of go through and tour if there's enough interest in something like this, not just my budget builds, to show what you can do. I mean, you can make anything commander. Just gotta have an idea of what you're trying to do, and in this case, we try to keep the spirit of the original deck, the standard deck, alive. So let me know in the comments. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Ring that bell for some more notifications. Let's find out what you people think about this. Um, like again, as you can tell, it's 5 months old since the last time I've touched and updated this deck list. So there's probably some spicy things we can include to it now that either A, maybe in budget, or B, have just recently come out. With all that said, I've been your Voodoo Dragon. Rub that belly for mana, and may your games be filled with enough magic.